Hello everyone, welcome back. I've had such a really weird week, and it's only Thursday, which is really whack in my opinion. Yesterday I got rear-ended while working for my other job, it was such a bizarre situation because I've got like whiplash in my neck and everything. It's kind of like not fun, but there was no damage to either car and everybody was fine, like for the most part. Just more so like startled than anything. But it's such a weird, bizarre situation that I feel like I'm still kind of like mentally processing, and I've just been taking like a lot of medication just to kind of deal with the pain in my neck. It's very frustrating. But today's pumpkin spice day at Starbucks, so like fall is officially begun, spooky season is happening, right? So that's why I'm wearing my pumpkin shirt today, okay? It's the best day of the year, kind of. But anyway, in honor of Pumpkin Spice Day and all of that fun stuff, I'm gonna go with like a little bit of that makeup look while I talk about today's topic, which is anger. Yeah, we're gonna talk about anger because I feel like anger gets shit on way too fucking much, and I feel like people don't actually really understand its full purpose of experiencing it and why it's such actually a beautiful emotion, I think. Which I kind of want to go ahead and start with talking about like what even is anger, you know? I know it's kind of a really weird and basic way to start because I'm pretty sure we all know like what anger is, but I think it is important to kind of just go over that to really get into the nuances of it. So typically anger is like a natural and like human response to like perceived threats or dangers, offenses, and it kind of just prepares you for that like fight or flight response often in situations, which can be triggered from like external factors that included, but not limited to traffic or like glitching technology or being treated unfairly, getting rear-ended by an old lady. And then even just other internal factors such as just stress and frustration and like unresolved trauma that's just like cropping up in different ways in our lives. All in all, anger is often just an emotional indicator that something is wrong. And it's largely just kind of been viewed very negatively, and even like within like the spiritual community and whatnot as like a low vibrational emotion. And I'll get more into that a little bit later. But let's also just talk about why anger gets a bad reputation anyway. Oh my god, holy shit, this is like so crusty. Okay. This is expired, almost as expired as I am, so let's just not do that. I think we're good. We're good on that one. Just use concealer instead for our primer. It's alright. It works. But anyway, anger can often be viewed negatively because of all the ways that it can show up when it's not expressed in a healthy or like well-managed way. And some of these can include destructive behavior. So that's like just general aggression and verbal abuse and physical violence, as we know, which can often just damage relationships and just create like hostile environments for everyone involved. And then even impulsive behaviors is very common with anger, of course, because it'll impair your judgment, and we end up saying things like we often don't mean in the heat of the moment if like we're not really taking that time to just sit with it and pause and whatnot. And potentially even engage in like just risky or life-threatening behavior, or if anything, some regrettable behavior, just depending on the situation. And even being in a chronic state of anger, it can create overall like health problems. And a lot of these health problems mainly have to do with like your heart, or like immunity, and just high blood pressure, and your mental health as well, which can just leave you in a chronic state of anxiety or depression, or just like emotional dysregulation or nervous system dysregulation in general. So another issue with anger and why it's viewed the way that it is just social stigma in general. Just cultural norms just have it like frowned upon entirely, whether that be like in the workplace or like within certain family dynamics, especially if you're a woman in particular, which people just generally view the expression of anger as having like any lack of self-control, or just, you know, are just overly emotional and just kind of ruled by your emotions. Which, speaking of women and anger, a lot of the time it's just kind of used to like invalidate women like speaking up and like, you know, standing up for themselves. They're viewed as being like hysterical or unladylike, or, you know, another one that I've just heard that absolutely grinds my gears is like, you know, hormones and shit like that is just a way of like shutting you down. And what, but yes, hormones as a way of just shutting down women. But then on the flip side of that, when it comes to men, it's a lot more like tolerated, simply because like vulnerability is also just kind of shut down within men at all, and just kind of viewed as a weakness. So the only acceptable emotion is anger, unfortunately. And then there is also conflict in general, right? There's a lot of people that just fear dealing with conflict and being in the middle of conflict, and would rather just avoid it at all costs, instead of looking at that as an opportunity to grow and learn from a situation, whatever that may be, or just address maybe certain unmet areas of opportunity. So anger is often the primary emotion that is like experienced when dealing with conflict. So when you kind of have that attitude toward like conflict and confrontation in general, so you are likely to want to avoid anger, and you kind of see that as like something that's just immediately going to escalate potentially into aggression. So with that said, people often do conflate anger and aggression, and they kind of like misunderstand the nuances between the two, even though it is true that sometimes like aggression can accompany anger when like not expressed in the right ways, or say in like the healthiest way. Rather, there then forms the belief that like anger is like inherently bad if you kind of just view them as like inextricably linked. A lot of people just lack the tools and the knowledge and the awareness to kind of understand the nuances between the two, which is okay. That can happen. But a lot of people just don't really seem to understand like how to sit with it and process it and recognize it for what it is, and expressing these sort of dense emotions without being destructive toward themselves or others, or maybe even potentially just, fear being judged as well. And another one is like religious or like philosophical conversations can speak of anger as like a negative emotion or a low vibrational emotion. As we did state earlier, that it can be viewed as that low vibrational emotion or like a moral failing or just a general barrier to spiritual growth. And honestly, this couldn't be farther from the truth. I need brown. So if we were to look at the Hawkins frequency scale, if you see where anger sits, it does sit at like the lower survival based like vibrational end of the spectrum. But while that's true, it's the highest frequency in that lower based frequency before you start to get into the higher frequencies. So I view anger as like a very necessary tool that kind of like pushes you out of those lower based frequencies and into those higher based frequencies when you take the information that anger is feeding you and like using it for positive action rather than repeating a pattern. Plus, also, if I recall correctly, Jesus was not beyond flipping some tables for, greedy bitches being greedy bitches. Okay, because I remember Jesus being pissed off or raging out because it was necessary. And he was like, this injustice don't need to be happening. It's bullshit. And so the media also plays a role in how anger is perceived, of course. Oftentimes, you just really see it in extremes. And it's often rage and violence and like even attributed to criminal behavior. And even when you think about Star Wars, right? Like Yoda said, fear leads to anger, fear leads to the dark side, and fear leads to anger, which anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering, which I only feel is one side of the coin, and a very interesting way of putting it, because anger can be a very, very positive tool if you let it. And that was quite literally part of Anakin's downfall, is that Anakin was discouraged from feeling a lot of his feelings, and a lot of people just told him how to feel in this situation and another, and he really didn't know who to trust, to the point where he didn't really trust himself, and it ultimately led to Darth Vader. This is crazy. I don't even think I've ever used this color. Oh. So anyway, why is anger important with all that said? So one of them is, of course, self-protection. It can kind of let you know when you've potentially been hurt in some way, or it can let you know that you've been hurt in some way, or you have maybe had like a boundary crossed within, and just something that may need some attention. And when anger kind of gives you that internal alarm that maybe a boundary has been crossed, or it just kind of like sparks a certain feeling in response to something, it can also let you know maybe what your values are, or if your values are changing and shifting, that internal alarm will certainly let you know. And it can also serve as a catalyst in your life for some change, whether it be that your present life is causing some anger and frustration that may let you know that you need to switch gears, maybe change your job, maybe change your lifestyle, maybe leave that toxic relationship, or maybe you're just noticing some very upsetting things within your community, and that's making you angry and upset, and that's letting you know that something needs to change, and it can be a catalyst for inspired positive action. And it's also a way of like emotional release. Sometimes we just have pent up emotions that are stored within, and they need to be let out somehow, and sometimes anger can be the thing that just helps it come out. But definitely the key there is knowing how to let that out in a productive way. So how can we do that? How can we process anger? I've also made a previous video that talks about triggers, identifying triggers, and also processing those triggers. And this is also kind of relevant here as well. You want to recognize and name the emotion that you're feeling. Recognize that it's anger or frustration or, anything under that umbrella, which I'll also figure out a way to put the emotions wheel, so that way you can really name the emotion that's going on, and also identify what exactly triggered that emotion. And then what is the story that you're telling yourself around said emotion? And then also identify the behavior that you're doing around the emotion once you become in that triggered state. Breathing heavily, slamming things, getting physical, yelling, all of that you want to know, because that can also let you know of other things that may be going on and perhaps where that's coming from, or if there's a pattern where that all stems from. So while you want to take note of that, then self-regulation is also... Ooh. Something is in my eye, y'all. I may have like OD'd on the glitter a little bit.
What?
I may have OD'd on the sparkle, but whatever. I wanted to be sparkle. So self-regulation tools. After you identify what is going on within and name the emotion, just taking a pause and sitting with it and breathing. Deep breathing is kind of a big part of that. So self-regulation tools, once we've sat with it and named the emotion and kind of identified the trigger that's happening, pausing, just taking a bit to pause. Even though the pause kind of starts with when we just start to like understand what's happening. Or sometimes you're not going to sit and identify the trigger in the moment, but maybe after the fact. But definitely in the moment, you want to stop. You want to pause. You just take note that things are coming up, things are happening, and take a deep breath. Maybe even take a walk, because taking a walk can also help to activate the logical center of your brain and keep that online. Meditating is also another great way just to sit and calm and regulate. EFT tapping is another good one, and YouTube can be a really great source as well, just for like finding techniques on how to do a lot of these different things. Like you can find meditation and probably EFT tapping sequences with affirmations that are in relation to anger and releasing anger. And just any form of physical activity is really good if you're able to do in the moment. And when anger involves like another person directly, say if it's like your partner, family member, coworker, whatever, what have you, you want to wait until you're calm and collected to address the situation. Definitely resist the urgency if that comes up to like address it right then and there, because it's just really not worth it, like to address something when you're in such a charged emotional state. It's just not worth it in any scenario. When it comes to the moment when you are addressing it, I would definitely just kind of like preface with that, even though I know maybe I waited a little bit to say it, but like I think it was really important for me to gather my emotions and my thoughts before I brought this concern up to you, because that is going to definitely be the better way to communicate, and you'll be able to communicate more clearly at that. You definitely want to remain calm and respectful. Depending on how much time has passed, you want to keep that at the forefront and use I statements. I statements are very powerful. It lets you know, like, it lets them know how you're feeling without necessarily putting like blame on the other person. You want to say, I felt blank when this happened, or some variation of that. And then also be assertive but not aggressive. A lot of people also conflate those two, that being assertive is being aggressive, when really it's just very confidently stating your experience without being harmful or disrespectful toward the other person. And then you always want to utilize active listening, which involves just relaxed body language and listening to when the other person is speaking, but then once they're done, you want to repeat what you heard, so that way you both can confirm that you're on the same page. And when working with another person, we always want to go for win-win solutions instead of blame or trying to compete with the other person. We want collaboration over competition. In a lot of interpersonal relationships, even professional or friendship, you will just see a lot of competition and really just trying to win or be right in the conversation, which really doesn't go anywhere and isn't really helping said relationship in the long run. And honestly, I think most of the time people's goals are to come to an understanding of each other and to be on the same page. Most of the time, I think both parties usually want the same thing, and to come to an understanding and to be like felt, seen, heard, validated, all of that fun stuff. So with that, you also want to make sure that everybody is clarified and agrees on the given solution at hand. More than anything, what you want to ensure is that everybody is being seen, heard, and validated, and that everybody is in fact on the same page. And this is going to require a lot of patience and perseverance, because you also may not get everything solved within one conversation. And I'm also one of those people that believes sometimes you have to go to bed angry, like especially when it comes to like dealing with conflict. You gotta go to bed angry sometimes, and that's really okay, because sometimes if you are like having a conversation that is loaded and heavy and it's still kind of continuing on, nobody's gonna get anything solved. Like when you're exhausted and tired and things are going late and yada yada yada. And some people can even use that as like a tactic to wear people down into getting their way. And that's another thing I'll talk about probably in another video another time, because I've also experienced that within my own life. Sleep deprivation, not it. But aside from that, you can channel your anger into positive action as well. Like when it has something to do with being angry from whatever may be going on within your community, you can take inspired action to advocate for your community or like participate in a cause, what have you. And then also creative outlets, writing and drawing and painting. That's always been some favorite ways to kind of get those feelings out. So it's the perfect way to do that in this type of scenario as well. So as I stated with the triggers, you do want to sit with those things and just kind of analyze it after the fact and just kind of take note on what came up and like how the situation turned out and what can be learned from it, what went well and what you can do better, and just if there's any areas of opportunity for you. Another thing you can have in your toolbox is to like develop just a healthy mindfulness toolkit for whenever these things come up, and you can address your anger and manage your triggers in a healthy way. And you definitely want to have your toolkit and create your toolkit based off of methods that are tried and true and they work for you and they make you feel great. And again, we want to go for things that are going to be healthy and productive for you. And another really important one is definitely letting go. You want to free up that emotional energy. You don't want to keep it stuck within you, because that's when it turns into chronic frustration that just stays built up in the body and can turn into other health issues. And from a spiritual and energetic standpoint, you are just carrying that around within your energy field. Some very unhealthy and unwanted energy until we choose to face that. And of course, don't ever be afraid to ask for professional help or help from a trusted friend, a trusted source that you know is going to be genuinely supportive for you. So some resources that you can also turn to will include books. I'll include some down in the description. Online, there's plenty of websites and apps that you can utilize to learn more about emotions and to manage them. Mindful.org, they offer articles and resources on mindfulness, and that includes specifically on managing anger. Also Coursera and Udemy, they offer a lot of, well, they offer everything, first of all. It's great if you want to go there just to learn anything, but especially for courses on like emotional intelligence and conflict resolution, anger management, you can utilize those resources as well. And there's a lot of great like mindfulness apps for anger that can also help. Calm, Headspace, Breathe to Relax, they have plenty of mindfulness and meditation resources for you. And again, therapy, professional help, support groups will be great. Moving your body as well with yoga can be a good thing, or just any like low impact type of exercise. Well, this has been my video on anger and how it's gotten a bad rap, but why it's so important and what you can do about it and navigate anger in a healthier way. And I hope you really enjoyed the conversation. I know I did, and I thank you for showing up and listening and tuning in, and I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you again on the next one. Bye.